landed like a fly. She left like a fly. The apartment across the hall had been vacant for 6 months, and suddenly, without warning, became occupied. She was from the east of Canada, absolutely beautiful brains too. And I told myself at first sight, she's trouble. She was, more than I could possibly imagine. A real fireball motor mouth type, but I really liked that at first. I like talkative people. Third night she was there, we walked down to the New Beverly Cinema, which was actually an old revival house for a showing of Streetcar Named Desire. And from then on, we began calling each other Stella and Stanley. Whenever I'd come back from a job or something, I'd yell up to a window, Stella! More frequently than not, it'd be her that was coming home from a job and yelling, Stanley! She was working her little round ass off, making about 10 grand a week as a human prop for fashion catalogs. Didn't even have a bank account when she first moved in. What do you do with the money, I asked her.
Well, I bought some CDs yesterday and I got some clothes, I got this bag.
The girl spent money like an arrow, and even with her income was always borrowing from me for food and rent. One of her biggest expenses was taxi fares. She didn't own a car, refused to take the bus. Back in those days, LA didn't have a subway. Up to $500 a day for taxis. To and from jobs, to and from stores, to and from the movies, to and from the beach. The beach? Well, who the fuck takes a cab from Hollywood to the beach? Rent a car, I told her. But she didn't have a license. She eventually took all of my advice, opened a bank account, stopped buying so many CDs, started buying used clothes, and bought 2 cars, still didn't have a license. A big Ford Bronco, which she almost never drove, and an old convertible Mustang.
Stanley.
She'd yell as she drove down the alley. She'd yell as she pulled into the driveway. Well, then we'd make healthy, disgusting, tasting things to eat. Drink cheap wine, talk almost all night on my big blue bed. But always in the middle of some deep conversation, she'd spring to her feet and say sisterly,
Good night, Stan.
Good night, Stella, I'd say. Out of my door she went and into her own across the hall, where she would start making phone calls. Sometimes I'd hear her talk on the phone for 2 or 3 hours back home to Canada, to her gingerbread family, to her friends, and to her old boyfriend. See, I was her only friend in LA, and the phone was one form of communication she could not live without. The phone bill was easily 4 times more than her rent. But I love this little girl. This 19-year-old motor-mouth know-it-all. She loved me too, but was afraid to admit it. The simple reason I didn't look good on paper. No regular job, skin too dark, used too many fuck words, unsuccessful as a photographer, unsuccessful as an artist. But whatever would a gingerbread family back home think, and her friends, and her old boyfriend. After all, this whole charade of a life she lived was strictly for them, just for effect. Many weeks in advance we planned to go skydiving together. But on the day we'd reserved at the skydiving school, we got up at 4:30 a.m. and drove all the way out to Paris, California, just to discover the wind was too strong for any planes to go up. She was absolutely heartbroken and didn't say a word the whole drive back. What's wrong, Stella?
I don't know.
The problem wasn't that her long-anticipated first jump had been postponed. It was that she'd already told everybody in Toronto that she'd be jumping today. And no doubt they'd be calling that night for a documentary.
What'll I tell them?
That you're dead?
It's not funny, Stan.
One night not long after, we'd gone to a big Hollywood Christmas party and gotten completely wasted on mixed tropical drinks. We took a cab home and talked for a while on my bed. She put her arms around me, stabbed her tongue into my mouth, and climbed up on top of me. She pulled out my dick through the zipper, slipped it under her miniskirt and around her panties, into her unbelievably hot and tight wetness. She wrote it, once up, once down. They must have remembered her loving family, friends, and old boyfriend back home in Toronto.
I can't do this.
She said, rolling off of me, standing up and pulling down her skirt simultaneously.
I can't do this.
She stormed out of my door and into her own. She called somebody in Canada and began telling them how exciting the party had been. Eddie Murphy was there, I overheard her say. It wasn't, but there was a black guy tending bar. Maybe they all looked the same to her. The best and worst fuck of my life. The best, because I loved that little bitch and had waited 5 months for the tip. The worst, because of its 4-second duration. Transformation of a girl who talked, laughed, and ate with me, and cared about me, into one who only said,
Hi, Stan. Bye, Stan. Hi, Stan. Bye, Stan. Hi, Stan. Bye, Stan. Hi, Stan. Bye, Stan.
Next weekend, I went up to Ventura County. When I got home Sunday night, she was gone. No note, nothing. Her apartment was unlocked, vacant, no furniture, nothing. Everything was gone except for the cars, which she left across the street in the post office parking lot. The Bronco was stolen the third night. The Mustang was towed by the city about a week after that. In like a fly, and out like a fly. Hidden like a fly, out like a fly. She'd mixed up my head. She'd driven a fork right through my fucking heart. She nibbled and chewed all the self-confidence from my bones. Still had the nerve to call 4 months later from Paris, France.
It's spring here.
She said on my answering machine.
Sun is shining. Flowers have blossomed. I miss you, Stan.
I miss you too, Stellafly, 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 Stellafly.